Allan Hirsch Advisors, creating aha moments, presents Aha Business Podcasts. We provide opportunities to discover information to help you run your business and guide your decision making. The more you know, the better decisions you make. For more information, log on to allanhirschadvisors.com. I'm your host, Allan Hirsch. Attention business owners. Has your business suffered financially from COVID-19? If so, let us help. I'm Allan Hirsch, a member of Business Coaches Assembled under a grant from the Small Business Breakthrough Executive Team. Our mission is to help business owners who have seen their revenues negatively impacted by 20% or more due to the virus. We can help you recover $50,000 to $70,000 or more of your lost revenue over the next 90 to 120 days. For more information, go to www.ahaonlinelearning.com to receive my book, 45-Minute Breakthroughs. That's go to www.ahaonlinelearning.com. Welcome to today's podcast. My guest today is Maryellen May, owner of Door 3 Coaching. She's a leadership and team coach. And my first question to you is, what motivates you to get up in the morning and go to work?
So outside of a yellow lab that has to go to the bathroom, I would say a really good stiff cup of coffee and just the ability to be really creative in helping business owners figure out different ways to grow and set up a culture where their people feel heard and feel like human beings again.
So, you do leadership and team coaching. You specialize in sales, working with salespeople.
Yes, that's a little niche that I have. Yeah.
Yes. So, what do you do with them?
So I get called in when teams and businesses feel like they're not really moving very fast and their people are kind of stuck in their ways. I can also get called in when people are having some infighting and they need someone to help facilitate something. So what I do is I help businesses and individual leaders kind of figure out that how they run their business has a lot to do with how they communicate. So I'm that third party that comes in and listens to how they talk to each other, how they create goals, how they make decisions, how they motivate their employees. Because a lot of times what's happening is leaders are complaining about their people, but they're not knowing what they're doing without even realizing it in ways they're holding people back from really growing. So I can help individual leaders, leadership teams, and sometimes salespeople that just find themselves getting in a rut when it comes to their selling process. So I kind of help them realize, what's your mindset? How are you thinking? And what are some of the rules that you have that keep you from maybe branching out and doing so much better than you're doing now?
Yeah. So how do you go about, it's a lot what I do.
Yeah.
They're different. They all are different. But what
Yes.
are some of the keys that you see that are the problems when they call you in that you have to help them solve?
So when I'm getting called into a business, usually the leadership team works within the confines of their own ways. So what's really interesting is they think they know what's going on. And so their rules and how they work is based on a lot of times what's not true. So when I get pulled in, I'll not only talk with them, but I'll talk to other key people within the organization, employees, customers, and help reflect back that maybe what they're thinking is working is not. So a lot of it's mindfulness and getting, leaders to start talking about uh, some of the problems that they're having even internally with each other. So when I talk about culture, what I tell people is that how leaders talk to each other, what they can say candidly, what they can't say candidly, how they disagree, all the mechanisms of that is a system that actually is the system of what their culture does. So they tend to think that it's not their problem. They think it's the people that work that aren't motivated and they're not engaged. But then when we come back and we close the doors and we talk in that conference room, we start to roll up our sleeves and realize that some of what they're dealing with is managers taking on too much and not allowing their people to stretch. So why is that? Like, where did that come from? And I think that's one of the things that we do is we dive into like, where did this system come from? And what can we do now to create a place where people can talk candidly, give feedback and not be afraid of it, make decisions, uh, disagree and be totally okay. In fact, want more disagreements so that people can start thinking outside the box. And once they start to feel what that feels like, that's when you start to see cultures shift. And that's when people start enjoying their job again too.
So what do you see as keys to in a leadership team like that, keys to the leadership that they need to change or they need to adapt to help them create a culture that promotes the sales, promotes what they're doing uh, when they're trying to do it?
So one of the things that I'm kind of high on right now is accountability. So when I work with the organizations and the leaders that I work with, I ask them the question of how do you create accountability within your culture? And accountability tends to be like this negative word, that no one really wants to talk about. So often what I notice is they go one of two places. Either they're very soft in how they create goals and strategies, or they're extremely hard and they create very competitive work environments. And both areas tend to have negative results. And in fact, right now, what I'm doing is I'm talking a lot about clarity and saying to the owners or to salespeople or anyone, like, look at the most disjointed relationship you have right now in your business. And if you looked at that person, can you actually say that that person is fully clear on what your expectations are, how you want something to be done, when you want something to be done, and they know when they are deemed successful? And what's funny is what I'm noticing when I'm talking to a lot of owners right now, they kind of cringe and they say, well, that's going to create more stress. So we tend to be very open when it comes to goals. They have goals, but if they don't meet it, we don't want them to stress out. And one thing that I started to learn last quarter, which I thought was super interesting, was that the number one stress factor for employees that are going through change is when they don't understand the expectations of their management. So I think what's happening is hey, can you kind of do this whenever? It'd be great if you get this done by Friday request might sound really positive and happy, but what happens is the person that gets that request is unsure whether it's really due Friday, how they want it to be done. And so what happens is that person stresses out because they either find themselves not saying no to get things done, or they don't realize that it didn't have to get done by Friday. So that's kind of like a really easy, simple way. But I think that when that becomes the mindset of leadership teams, that they want to be nice, thinking that that will help people feel better, I think it's kind of cool to realize that that's just doing just the opposite. So that's an example of one thing that I'm starting to notice is how leaders create accountability. And when people don't make the goals, what do they do? How do they react? How do they give feedback? All that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
So you're
So,
smiling. So where is this hitting a note for you?
well, it hits a note for me in and I don't remember them technically off the top of my head, but a book that I read, Leadership Challenge, a number of years ago. I don't know if you know the book,
No, I don't.
uh, but they've done a study of over 90,000 leaders around the world,
Okay.
and it started, I guess, in '88, and the most recent one was 2016, I think, or 2012. But anyway, and they've come to the conclusion that there are five parts of leadership that every one of these great leaders has. And if they can get them to mimic these, to set up set an example. The simple thing, you want to call back customers in 24 hours. If someone's calling you, you better call them back in 24 hours.
Right.
If not, why should your staff do it?
Right.
It's creating a culture of habit. You want to do that. You do things that create an example. You create your vision. You share it with employees. You share it with your salesmen. What's the vision? Where's the company going? That's and then hold people accountable to it. The third is building trust.
Uh-huh.
Trusting, delegating. Most business owners, and I run into this all the time, they don't trust people.
So let's sit here for a moment, because I think what you're saying is really where the crux of this comes to fruition. Because what I start to notice is when I'm working with leaders, there might be some employee that they deem a non-performer. Bill's nice, but he's really not getting the job done. And so when I say, well, what do you do with Bill? How do you guys deal with it? And what I think is interesting is people don't know how to deal with Bill. So here's what happens when Bill's assigned something, I will do it for him because I don't think he can do it. And my question is it that he can't do it? Are your directions unclear? Have you really hashed that out? Because what happens with our culture, we very seldom ask for help or ask questions. So I did a presentation with 8 CEOs, and we made up a rule before it started. And the rule was there are no duh questions. And what ended up happening was I gave them a directive to follow. And I had them draw 6 circles on a page and then put 6 stars on top of the circle. Take the page, fold it in half, crease it, rip it, and then show me what the picture, what you have. And every single CEO, it looked different. So I started to think, so what does this mean? And they talked about the fact that well, they all made assumptions. So what is this costing business when people make assumptions? But then I pulled it back and I said, so did anybody have any questions about what I was asking for? And they were all like, whoa, we didn't. The duh question rule went out the window. So what's interesting is when we create dialogues and conversations where if I'm working with you, Allan, and I'm saying, hey, Allan, I'm going to be as clear as I can with this directive. And if at any time you have a question I want you to ask me, I'm making up a story that you're going to be more understanding of what I want. There's going to be less questions, and you probably are going to be better at getting it done. When I don't do that, and you might drop the ball or not get around to it because I was unclear, I won't delegate. I'll start to carry the stuff and put it in my backpack. And that's what leaders do. And that's where I've always been intrigued with why isn't delegating working? So the clarity work that I'm doing is really interesting because I think people are realizing how nonchalant they are about asking, hey, Allan, can you get this done for me at some point this week if you can? And it would be great, rather than I need this by Friday at 12. And because we don't do that, what happens is you will tend to hedge your response and say, yeah, I'll try to get that done. And then we leave each other, and then the stress happens. I'm not sure if Allan's going to do it, and you're not sure if you understand what I want. So something as simple as that is helping me with teams understand that if we just started a more clear conversational strategy where everybody was cool about not understanding, asking for help, saying the duh questions, I just think that working with customers could be different, working with each other could be different. And I think there'd be so much more of an understanding of trust within groups.
Well, there needs to be a tremendous amount of trust between the CEO and the people that work for him.
Right.
It doesn't mean, and it means delegating. It means to be giving of instruction and letting people use their abilities to make decisions. And if they make the right decision, they need to be thanking them and dealing with them and appreciating both publicly and privately.
Right.
And if it's a wrong decision, it needs to be discussed in a coaching manner, not with, how most people do it, with demand and yelling and screaming and, see what you cost me, all that kind of stuff, because that doesn't solve the problems.
Right. And that goes into the feedback and
Right.
how that can be really hard. A lot of teams don't know how to give feedback, don't know how to get it. They take things very personal. So like, these are all the soft skills that we were never taught. At least I was never taught. But now, especially with people working from home, understanding and talking to someone either on the telephone or across a Zoom screen, you really want to make sure that people feel like they are doing what they need to do to be successful. And I think it takes a little bit of time, but it's well worth it because then it's more efficient
Yeah.
and
Well,
effective.
let's take a break now for a couple of commercials. And when
Okay.
I come back, I'm going to have continue this conversation with Maryellen May of Door 3 Coaching. I'm Allan Hirsch of Allan Hirsch Advisors, and this is AHA Business Podcasts.
Hi, Rick Dempsey here. As a former Oriole and Series MVP, I know a lot about winning and championship teams. Today, I am happy to tell you about my award-winning web design and internet marketing team, Adventure Web Interactive. For over 2 decades, many of Maryland's most successful firms have chosen Adventure Web as their strategic partner for web design and online marketing. I can tell you from using them personally, their search engine optimization and social media programs have saved their clients tens of thousands over the traditional pay-per-click digital agency. Visit AdventureWebInteractive.com and listen to what clients such as Hercules Fence, TriStar Electric, ABC Rental, Rhine Landscaping, Markdown's Office Furniture, and many more highly successful firms have to say. And don't forget to tell them Rick Dempsey sent you.
Strengthen, protect, and preserve your retirement nest egg. Scott Garceau here for the Stephen J. Sless Group, Baltimore's reverse mortgage specialist. Reverse mortgages have evolved to become a viable retirement tool. Enjoy retirement without monthly mortgage payments, improve cash flow, pay off debt, and stretch retirement savings. Stephen and his team can offer strategies to make housing wealth work for you. If you're 62 or older, learn if a reverse mortgage could help. Visit reversebaltimore.com.
An equal housing opportunity lender. This is not a commitment to lend. Stephen J. Sless, NMLS 298581. PRMI NMLS 3094.
Welcome back to the show. I'm meeting with Maryellen May of Door 3 Coaching. Thank you for being with me. I'd like to continue with the conversation. And I want to talk a little bit about, because you just mentioned some soft skills. And I know teaching soft skills has actually changed in the last year with the pandemic. You're dealing with teams that, you used to be able to come in and go into an office and use a conference room.
Right.
How do you deal with some of these skills and some of this training when they are across the country?
So I know from my business model, I had to go virtual really fast. The good news about that is, as a coach, I do all my coaching via telephone. In fact, I'd rather coach someone via telephone than Zoom because I feel like my listening is heightened when I'm not seeing the person. So once I set up the Zoom meetings for us, I think a big part of it was realizing that sometimes Zoom, people have more interaction and see each other even more so than they did at a conference room table. Because when you think about it, if I sat at the end of the conference room table, I might see 2 people's faces during a meeting. Now, if I've got a team of 10, I'm seeing 9 people's faces. So as much as people were thinking, this is a little bit disjointed, I actually started to notice that you can notice when someone's not talking more on a Zoom call. So there could be some positives regarding Zoom that we brought into play. And we also started to see people's personal lives, which I actually think was really important. When I have my meetings, I have people not put themselves on mute, because if a dog barks or a baby cries, we kind of crack up and realize that that's kind of the human part of what we do.
Right.
So in my teams, it's been nice to see. I had a 7-year-old come across the screen and do muscle poses for us at one point because he thought that the meeting was over. I mean, we're just kind of cracking up at this, and people are starting to see really what the families are like and what's going on with people. So from that aspect, I think there's some positives that came in. I'm not a full Zoom person though, 100%. I do a lot of work without Zoom because I do think that there is a Zoom overload. And managers now are reaching out to their people in a way that they haven't in the past. Because maybe you had an owner who used to see the receptionist every day when he walked by, but now he doesn't see her anymore. So I think that we've had to establish a different working arrangement so that people might have more meetings with the entire office where they're just checking in and relaying information, because I think that kind of contact and community is really important.
Personally, I like Zoom because I can see their reactions
Uh-huh.
and the body language. I can't see my hands usually, or their hands, unless you sit further back, but you can see their body language.
Mhm.
And that can be very helpful in some of the coaching that I do. So I enjoy the Zoom, but I understand where you're coming from.
But one cool thing about Zoom though too is now customers that live across country that might not have been in your marketplace, now you can reach out and talk to someone in Arizona. And so I know through LinkedIn, I've been connecting with so many different people, and some of my work is taking me overseas, and that's incredible. You know, without, I got to make sure that I understand the time zones, which can be a little disconcerting, but it does open up a great marketplace for people to suddenly reach out and look at products and processes that they've never done before. So, and that, I don't want to downplay how fun it is though to be in the same room with people, because that is something that, you know, I do miss that. I do miss the little things that happen when you're having a cup of coffee with someone across the table. So,
Right.
yeah.
But Zoom meetings do create more business atmosphere and less personal, I think, in the
Less,
meeting.
yeah. Well, I think that, you know what, you don't have time. Like, you know, we used to get into the conference room, think about the little chit chat that happened as everybody was getting their chair, and how about that game last night? And
Right.
sometimes you don't have that as much when everyone's starting on time, you know, and we're going to have a start time. That's what you're saying is kind of fun, because I think it's great. I have check-ins with my folks where I have them just give a color, yellow, green, or red, as to how they're feeling, how they're emotionally feeling. They don't have to explain what it is, but they'll just say red is when things are hot and things are hard and tough. Yellow is that in between, and green is I'm ready to go. So I try to incorporate a little bit of that so we understand where people's mindsets are when we start, to offset the fact that you don't have that chit chat time in the beginning where you
Yeah.
usually set up.
So how do you think sales have changed? Talking about that in the since the pandemic in the last year, how has sales changed, and how are you adapting and asking your clients to adapt to the changes?
So I mean, think about all the whining and dining that has been going on, where people were taking, you know, their customers to the Capitals games and the Ravens games, and oh, people don't have that as much. And so there's a certain personality type that I know is just aching to get back to the old way. But that being the case, I think that selling is kind of selling. When I work and I coach salespeople, I'm not really coaching them on the process, because yeah, you need to know how to use Zoom. You know, you need to understand how to have virtual meetings with people. But I'm really talking to them about their mindset and what's challenging them to reach out to people. Because I work with a lot of experienced salespeople who have gotten stuck, who suddenly never jumped into LinkedIn fully, or they're unsure about how to have a meeting with someone or a networking meeting over Zoom. And those are the same people I think that were stuck before. I just think right now it's just added to the stuckness. So I think a lot of it has to do with change and working through change and getting back to what they love, which is talking to people and not getting caught up in comparing themselves to the guy across the street that has a that has, an incredible blog and a podcast and all this stuff, and they're feeling inadequate and stuck. So that's a lot of the work that I do.
So with this pandemic, so much of what is happening is not going to change. We're into this Zoom society. I mean, there's one law firm locally that's regional that's growing. 60% of the attorneys have already said they're not coming back to the office.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
and I think that's across the board. People aren't coming
right.
back.
I mean,
Right.
web designers that have personnel, they're letting them stay at home. They're actually more productive at home than they were in the office because there's no water cooler conversations and that kind of thing. So so how is this going to affect? I mean, the salesman that wants to be more in line, more connecting live, might not have the ability to do that. How does that change in the dynamics of what the sales and how you coach?
So my sales coaching all along was really about what's the conversation that you're having and how well are you listening? So pandemic or not, I've been helping people realize that, and it even comes back to clarity. When you're not clear as to why you're meeting with this person and what value you're going to bring them and how the process works, you can have a lot of handshakes and Ravens games, but things just don't happen. So there are conversations that are sales conversations that more often than not have to do with how well they're listening and getting out of their head and not worrying about how they look and being who they truly are. So I feel like this pandemic has allowed us to slow down a little bit and kind of hone in on the values that are important to us. And when that is able to be parlayed through a virtual, that's when people start to say, I want to work with Allan. And more often than not, it's not what you're saying. It's not the selling of a product. It's how well are you listening, aligning, empathizing with the person across. So that's kind of where I come from. And I feel like, just like looking at you right now, I feel like I can be closer to you right now than I might be in a coffee shop where everything is loud and there's lots of people behind us. So, but it's an intentional thing. And it's also a little bit of a personal thing because there's confidence that can be created that a lot of people aren't sure of just actually being themselves. So that's part of the soft skill and mindset training that I do when I work with salespeople.
Yeah. So if I was interested in hiring you or someone on the podcast was in, what's the process look like?
So all I need to do is reach out and call me. And what I do is I just have a one-on-one kind of brainstorming with whoever is looking for some help. So sometimes I'll talk to the CEOs or leaders individually. Sometimes they'll say, hey, Maryellen, can you just come and talk to our team for a second? I do have an assessment that I work with that helps me look at their design, and the assessment helps me understand how they talk to each other, where they are from a productivity standpoint, and how they design relationships. So I have one report that when I meet with them and show them, this is what I'm seeing, it can kind of be an eye-opener because in that report, it'll help them realize, wow, we don't have as much trust as I thought. And decision-making doesn't seem to be where we thought that would be either. So the assessment is something that I actually offer for free for a CEO, and I do a one-on-one with them. But I think what's really intriguing is when I say, what do you think the other 5 people on your team would say about these areas? And then when you have one report, it gives you an overview that's really easily understood. And it's something that we use as we work together. So 8-9 months from when we start, I run it again and they can actually see and feel at, where they've gotten better at talking to each other, goals, talking through difficult situations, motivating each other. And that's really fun because I don't know many coaches that actually have something that will plot progress so they can feel it and see it.
Okay. So thank you for being on the podcast. If someone listening to the show wanted to reach you, How can they do that?
They can go to my website, which is door3coaching.com, or my email is Maryellen at door3coaching.com. So they can do that, or at LinkedIn. You know, I love to reach out to people on LinkedIn. So if they're at all interested, they'll see some of the things I do, and I'd be more than happy to chit chat with them and just see what together we could do to help make their business higher in revenue and more fun to be in.
Well, thank you very much for being on the podcast today. I appreciate it. I'm Allan Hirsch of Allan Hirsch Advisors, your host. To reach me, visit my website, www.ahaonlinelearning.com. And if you want, you can register to get my book, 40-Minute Breakthroughs. You can listen to the podcast, the past shows, wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribing to AHA Business Podcast. Thank you for listening. And I'm Allan Hirsch, and this has been AHA Business Podcast.